A former slot technician just revealed something about Lightning Link that 99% of players never notice, and it's costing them thousands of dollars. Casinos are banking on you missing this information, and what I'm about to show you could change everything about how you approach these machines. Let me tell you about Frank. Frank walked into his regular casino 3 times a week for 3 years straight, and every single time he sat down at the same Lightning Link machine. He loved that hold and spin feature, the way those orbs would lock into place, the anticipation of filling the screen. Frank thought he had his system down. He'd play the penny denomination because he could make his money last longer, and he figured more spins meant more chances at that bonus round. What Frank didn't know, what the casino certainly never told him, was that he was playing the worst possible version of that machine. According to internal data from former employees, the penny denomination Lightning Link typically operates with an RTP between 85 and 87%. Now compare that to the dollar denomination of the exact same machine, same hold and spin feature, same progressive jackpots on display, but the RTP jumps to between 91 and 93%. That's a 6% difference, and over the course of Frank's 3 years of regular play, that gap added up to something devastating. Frank kept meticulous records in a little notebook, tracking every session. When a former slot technician who'd left the industry finally explained this denomination difference to him, Frank went home and did the math. Based on his tracked coin in over those 3 years, that 6% RTP difference translated to roughly $11,000. $11,000 that Frank lost simply because he didn't know that the denomination he chose fundamentally changed the machine's programming. The casino had both versions sitting right there on the floor, sometimes right next to each other. Same game, same manufacturer, same flashing lights and exciting sounds. But the mathematical reality underneath was completely different, and Frank had no way of knowing. But here's what's even more shocking. The denomination isn't even the biggest mistake that Lightning Link players make. There's something that happens at the bet selection screen that most Lightning Link players completely overlook. And according to former employees, this might be the single most profitable design choice the manufacturer ever made. It has to do with the relationship between your bet size and how often that hold and spin feature actually triggers. Let me introduce you to Maria. Maria was different from most casino players because she did something unusual. She tracked data. Over the course of 6 months, she documented 500 spins at 3 different bet levels on Lightning Link machines, always the same dollar denomination, always during similar times of day. What she discovered made her physically sick when she finally analyzed her spreadsheet. At the minimum bet of 50 cents per spin, Maria's data showed the hold and spin bonus triggered approximately once every 137 spins. When she increased to $2.50 per spin, that frequency changed dramatically, triggering once every 73 spins. But here's where it gets really interesting. At $5 per spin, the bonus round triggered once every 48 spins on average. Former slot technicians report that this isn't coincidence, it's programming. The game's algorithm treats different bet levels as essentially different experiences, and players betting minimum amounts get a drastically reduced trigger frequency. Think about what this means in practical terms. A player betting 50 cents needs to go through roughly 137 spins, risking $68.50 in total bets just to see one bonus round. Meanwhile, a player betting $5 sees a bonus round after 48 spins, risking $240, but getting nearly 3 times as many opportunities at the feature. The hold percentage works differently across these bet tiers, and casinos count on minimum bettors never realizing they're essentially playing a watered-down version of the same game. Maria told a former employee about her findings, and his response was simple. Now you understand why we positioned the bet selection where we did. Most players just hit the minimum and start spinning without thinking about it. But even after learning about bet size optimization, Maria discovered something else. Something about when she was playing that changed everything. Former technicians reveal that Lightning Link machines don't perform consistently throughout the day. The hold percentage adjustment windows, that's the internal term, shift based on casino floor traffic patterns. During peak hours, typically 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends, internal reports suggest the machines enter what's called a high hold period. The casino floor is packed, players are everywhere, and the machines are programmed to be tighter during exactly these hours when most recreational players show up. One player discovered this pattern accidentally. He worked night shifts and could only play during afternoon hours on weekdays. His results were noticeably better than his friend who played the same machines on Friday and Saturday evenings. When they compared notes over several months, the difference was stark enough that they started questioning whether they were even playing the same game. A former technician later confirmed what they'd suspected. They essentially weren't. Casinos will never advertise these time-based patterns, and why would they? The entire business model depends on players not recognizing that the machine sitting in front of them at 8 p.m. on Saturday is mathematically different from that same physical machine at 2 p.m. on Tuesday. But even if you play at the optimal time with the optimal bet size, there's something that happens during the actual bonus round that millions of people get completely wrong, and it's costing them the majority of their potential winnings. During that hold and spin bonus round, when those orbs start locking into place on your screen, there's a decision point that most Lightning Link players don't even realize exists. It's not a decision you make with buttons or choices on the screen. It's a mental calculation that happens in your head while you watch those orbs land. And based on analysis of thousands of bonus rounds, the vast majority of players make this calculation completely wrong. Here's what I'm talking about. When you trigger the hold and spin feature, you start with 3 respins and an empty grid. As orbs land, they lock in place and your resin count resets to 3. Now, most players have the same thought process during this feature. They want more orbs. The more orbs you collect, the better the bonus, right? That's what it feels like, and that's exactly what the game design wants you to believe. But former employees reveal that this intuition is mathematically backwards in specific situations. When you have 3 orbs locked on the screen, the optimal outcome is actually more orbs. The multipliers at this stage don't mean much, because you're multiplying a very small base amount. But here's where players get it wrong. When you have 8 or 9 orbs already locked, the mathematics flip completely. At that point, you're not hoping for more orbs, you're hoping for multipliers, and the special orbs that enhance what's already there. The difference in final payout between these two strategies, understanding what to hope for based on your current orb count, can be 3 to 5 times according to data analysis. A former employee stated, "We watched players make the wrong mental calculation hundreds of times per day. They'd have 9 orbs locked, and they'd be cheering for more orbs when what they actually needed was that 2x or 5x multiplier to land. But nobody ever explained the math to them, and the game certainly doesn't tell you." Before I reveal the next insider secret, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because the information I share here could genuinely save you thousands of dollars. And let me know in the comments what's the most you've ever won on Lightning Link. I'm curious to hear your experiences. Now here's something that cost one player his entire bankroll, and it has to do with those progressive jackpots you see displayed at the top of every Lightning Link machine. You know the ones I'm talking about. The mini, the minor, the major, and the grand. That grand jackpot number climbs higher and higher, sometimes reaching $15,000, $20,000, even $30,000 or more. It sits there at the top of the screen, flashing, tempting, making every spin feel like it could be the life-changing moment. Internal documentation reveals something about these progressives that casinos never explain. The actual hit frequency, that's how often each jackpot level triggers, is so vastly different between the mini and the grand that they're essentially different games. The mini might hit once every few hundred spins. The grand might hit once every several 100,000 spins. But they're displayed with equal prominence given equal visual weight, and the game provides zero information about these dramatically different probabilities. Let me tell you about Tony, because what happened to Tony is something several former employees say haunts them to this day. But before I tell you Tony's full story, you need to understand the mathematical reality that casinos never explain. The reality that turned Tony's 8 month chase into a financial disaster that he's still recovering from years later. The mathematical reality behind those progressive jackpots is something former technicians describe using a term most players never hear: expected coin in. This refers to the theoretical amount of money that needs to be wagered across all linked machines before each jackpot level hits. For the mini jackpot, internal reports suggest the expected coin in is relatively modest, maybe $15,000 to $20,000 in total wagers across the linked bank. For the minor, that number jumps to somewhere between 60 and 90,000. The major requires an estimated 200 to 300,000 in total wagers. But the grand, that life-changing number flashing at the top of your screen, former employees reveal it requires somewhere between $2 and $4 million in total coin in before it's mathematically likely to hit. Now here's the cruel irony that makes this especially devastating. Let's say you're playing a dollar. Denomination machine betting $5 per spin, which is a fairly aggressive bet level. You'd need to complete somewhere around 400,000 to 800,000 spins, personally, to have a reasonable mathematical shot at that grand jackpot. At 5 seconds per spin, that's roughly 500 to 1,000 hours of continuous play. The amount you'd wager during that time, assuming perfectly average mathematics, would be somewhere between $2 million and $4 million. And the grand jackpot you're chasing? It's displaying $18,000. Former technicians explain that by the time any individual player hits the grand, through their own play, the house edge has already extracted far more than the jackpot pays. The only players who hit grand jackpots without this mathematical deficit are the lucky ones who happen to sit down right before it hits, benefiting from the coin in that hundreds of other players already fed into the system. The industry has a term for this: negative expected value. It means that the mathematical reality guarantees you'll spend more chasing the prize than the prize is actually worth. Now let me tell you what happened to Tony. Tony started playing Lightning Link in January, focused entirely on chasing that grand jackpot. He kept a detailed spreadsheet, tracking every session, every bonus round, every small win. He'd hit the minor a few times, the major once, and those wins kept him believing the grand was just around the corner. Tony played 3 to 4 times per week, usually 2 to 3 hour sessions, always at the same bank of linked Lightning Link machines at his local casino. By August, 8 months into his chase, it finally happened. The screen exploded with celebration. The grand jackpot triggered $12,847. Tony took a photo of the screen, called his wife with shaking hands, felt that rush of vindication that every persistent gambler dreams about. But when Tony got home and opened his spreadsheet, the one he'd maintained so carefully for 8 months, the total wagered column told a different story: $18,320. His wife saw the number and her face changed. Tony had won the grand jackpot and was still down $5,473 overall. The small wins along the way, the minor and major jackpots, the regular hold and spin bonuses, none of it had been enough to overcome the fundamental mathematics of the game. A former employee who'd left the industry months earlier told Tony something that made it even worse. We all knew the math. We watched players chase these grands every single day, but we couldn't tell you. It's not illegal. It's just how progressives work. The house edge doesn't disappear just because there's a jackpot. And if you think that's heartbreaking, there's one more thing about Lightning Link that millions of players never notice. Something so insidious that it actually makes you think you're winning when you're mathematically losing money with every celebration. Here's what happens during those hold and spin bonus rounds that reveals just how calculated this entire system really is. You trigger the feature, those orbs start landing, the machine erupts with sounds and flashing lights, and you watch your credit meter climb. Let's say you're betting $5 per spin. The bonus round plays out, orbs lock into place, maybe you get a couple multipliers, the feature ends and the machine celebrates while your credit meter shows you just won $3.25. The sounds are identical to when you win $50. The visual celebration is exactly the same. Your brain releases the same dopamine hit, triggering that same reward response that keeps you engaged in playing. According to industry insiders, approximately 68% of Lightning Link hold and spin bonuses result in payouts. That don't even cover the bet that triggered them. 68%. These are called losses disguised as wins in industry terminology, and the sound design is specifically engineered to make these losing bonus rounds feel like winning experiences. Your logical brain knows you bet $5 and won 325. That's a net loss of $1.75. But the emotional experience the machine creates is pure celebration. Let me tell you about Jennifer. Jennifer played Lightning Link for 6 consecutive hours one Saturday afternoon. She triggered the hold and spin feature 32 times during that session, and by her own account, she felt like she was winning all day. The bonus kept hitting, the machine kept celebrating, her mood was elevated, she felt lucky. When she finally left the casino and checked her bank account that evening, she'd withdrawn $840 total. The shock of seeing that number after a day that felt psychologically like winning created a cognitive dissonance she described as almost physically disorienting. A former employee explained it plainly. The sound design, the visual celebration, the animation sequences, they're specifically engineered to make losses feel like wins. It's not an accident. It's the core of the psychological model. Players stay longer and bet more when they feel like they're winning, even when the math shows they're losing. Now, here's something even more insidious, and it has to do with the different themed versions of Lightning Link you see on casino floors. You've probably noticed them. Happy Lantern, Wild Chuco, High Stakes, Magic Pearl, Tiki Fire. They all have the same basic hold and spin mechanic, the same progressive jackpot structure, the same manufacturer. Most players assume these are essentially the same game with different graphics, but internal reports suggest something very different. Different themed versions have it measurably different. Return to player percentages, and casinos know exactly which themes perform worst for players. Happy Lantern, according to documentation from former workers, typically operates with an RTP between 86 and 88%. Wild Chuco tends to run slightly higher, around 88 to 90%. The high-stakes version, despite the name suggesting bigger player opportunity, often has the tightest programming of all, sometimes running as low as 84 to 86%. But here's the strategic piece that makes this especially manipulative. Casinos deliberately place the lowest RTP themes in the highest traffic areas. Happy Lantern machines, with their bright colors and celebratory Asian aesthetic, get positioned near entrances and main walkways where foot traffic is heaviest, where casual players and newcomers are most likely to sit down. The psychological reason players think different themes are luckier has nothing to do with actual performance and everything to do with confirmation bias and selective memory. But casinos exploit this by positioning their worst performing versions exactly where they'll get the most play. But here's the final thing you need to know about Lightning Link, and this one ties everything together in a way that reveals just how completely this system is designed to guarantee the casino wins. Here's what former employees reveal when they explain how all these elements work together: the denomination trap, the bet size algorithm, the time of day hold adjustments, the bonus round psychology, the progressive jackpot mathematics, and the losses disguised as wins. These aren't separate issues. They're interconnected design choices that compound each other, and casinos are counting on players getting at least 2 or 3 of these factors wrong every single session. Think about the mathematical reality of compound mistakes. A player who chooses penny denomination instead of dollar denomination is already operating with a 4 to 6% RTP deficit. Add minimum bet sizing, which reduces bonus trigger frequency by nearly 60% compared to higher bet levels, and you've compounded that disadvantage. Show up during peak weekend evening hours when the hold percentage adjustment windows are active, and you're playing an even tighter version of an already disadvantaged game. Then, during the bonus rounds, you do manage to make the wrong mental calculation about whether you need more orbs or multipliers, and you're leaving 30 to 50% of potential bonus value on the table. Chase the grand jackpot with the mistaken belief that persistence will overcome negative expected value, and you're guaranteeing long-term losses that dwarf any possible jackpot win. Finally, let the celebration sounds and flashing lights convince you that losing bonus rounds are actually wins, and you'll stay in your seat feeding money into the machine far longer than rational analysis would ever justify. Former employees describe it this way: Lightning Link is designed with so many variables, so many layers of mathematical complexity hidden behind simple gameplay, that optimization is nearly impossible for casual players. Even informed players who understand some of these factors rarely get all of them right simultaneously, and getting just 6 out of 9 factors right still leaves you with a significant house edge working against you. Here's what those same insiders recommend, and this isn't about winning, it's about losing less. Some players, after learning these 9 revelations, shifted their entire approach. They stopped chasing progressives entirely. They focused on time of day patterns and played only during confirmed low traffic windows. They increased their bet sizing to access better trigger frequencies while reducing total session time to compensate for the increased risk. Most importantly, they started tracking actual results instead of relying on the emotional narrative the machine was creating. Let me tell you about David. David was a regular Lightning Link player who learned these insider secrets from a former technician. He didn't stop playing, but he fundamentally changed his approach. Instead of 3-hour weekend evening sessions chasing the grand jackpot, he played 90-minute weekday afternoon sessions with higher bet sizing and zero progressive focus. He tracked every session in a spreadsheet, calculating actual profit and loss instead of trusting his emotional sense of how the session went. Over 6 months, David's tracked losses decreased by roughly 60% compared to his previous year of play. Same monthly budget, same game, completely different mathematical outcome. This isn't framed as a winning strategy because the house edge still exists. The mathematics still favor the casino. But it is absolutely a loseless strategy, and that distinction matters when you're talking about thousands of dollars over time. So here's what you now know that 99% of Lightning Link players don't. The denomination you choose changes the fundamental programming. Your bet size directly affects bonus trigger frequency. The time of day you play determines which hold percentage window is active. The bonus round requires different strategies depending on current orb count. The progressive jackpots display equal visual weight, while having wildly different hit probabilities. The grand jackpot specifically is designed with negative expected value. The celebration sounds are engineered to make losses feel like wins. Different themed versions have measurably different RTPs, and all of these factors compound together in ways that make casual optimization nearly impossible. This is completely legal. It's all disclosed in technical documentation that nobody reads, buried in math that nobody calculates, hidden behind entertainment value and psychological manipulation, but it's questionable when you consider how many people lose money they can't afford to lose. Chasing an experience the machine is deliberately misrepresenting. If this information helped you understand something you didn't know before, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to this channel and help other players by sharing this video. Comment below if you've experienced any of these situations, if you've chased a grand jackpot, if you've had that moment of checking your bank account after a session that felt like winning. And in my next video, I'll reveal which slot machines former employees say are actually fair, the games where the house edge is transparent and the gameplay doesn't rely on psychological manipulation. This knowledge could genuinely save you thousands of dollars. Stay informed, stay smart, and I'll see you in the next one.